Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Eric Fitzgerald. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Austin Police Department over investigations. We're here today to talk about the homicide that occurred in the 6400 block of East US Highway 290 this past Thursday, November 7th. Detective Reed with our homicide unit will provide details about what happened in this incident, but on behalf of the Austin Police Department and the Austin community, I'd like to offer my condolences to the family of the victim. I also want to thank the witnesses that came forward in this homicide. Their cooperation and willingness to assist detectives played a major role in us being able to make an arrest and bring this to a resolution so quickly. Crimes like these ultimately affect all of us in the community, and we need to work together when they happen so that we can bring justice to the victim and their families. We truly appreciate our community and all you do to help us in tragic situations like these. I also want to recognize the excellent police and investigative work that was done by all involved in this case. From our initial patrol response to the scene, our detectives, both from our risk unit and our homicide unit, members of our Austin Police Department Tactical Intelligence Team, our federal partners on the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, and our victim service counselors, and more that tirelessly worked to solve this case and ultimately make an arrest. Every one of the people I mentioned worked with nothing but passion and diligence to bring justice and closure to the victim and their families. So with that, I'd like to invite Lead Detective Patrick Reed to come up and speak about the case.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. We'll just kind of go through a rundown of the events as they unfolded. On November 7th of this year, at approximately 5:54 p.m., Austin 911 received multiple calls regarding shots fired to the Texas Health and Human Services building at 6400 East US 290. Those calls referenced someone was firing a gun, and then also callers provided information that there was someone that was down with apparent gunshot wounds to the leg and stomach. APD officers, Austin Travis County EMS, and Austin Fire Department were dispatched to the scene. The first APD officer arrived on the scene approximately 2 minutes later at 5:56 p.m. Witnesses were already providing life-saving measures to the victim, and officers took over those life-saving measures till EMS arrived. EMS arrived, quickly assessed the victim, and at approximately 6:06 p.m. transported the victim to a local hospital, where unfortunately he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased at approximately 6:25 p.m. And that victim was identified as Shelby Wayne Cody. Several witnesses on scene were identified by the patrol officers and agreed to be interviewed by detectives, and were transported to the APD headquarters here, where we interviewed them, kind of developed an outline of what happened. So at approximately 5:50 p.m., Shelby was outside the building, and the suspect, who we later identified as Levante Harrison, arrived in his vehicle. Mr. Harrison exited his vehicle. There was no conversation, no provocation, no conversation, and he began firing at Shelby. Shelby was struck several times. Mr. Harrison then entered his vehicle and departed the scene. And based on talking with witnesses and the crime scene analysis, we don't believe that Mr. Harrison was targeting anyone other than Shelby. On November 12th, at approximately 2 p.m., the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force located Mr. Harrison and arrested him for an outstanding parole violation warrant. And then the next day, on November 13th, we filed first-degree murder charges on Mr. Harrison for the murder of Shelby Cody. Any questions?
Yes, so you said that Shelby was on target. Was there a motive as to why he shot him?
we're not. It's still an ongoing investigation. This is just preliminary information, so we don't want to release too much more about that.
I have three. They're all related, so I'm just going to come in here. Do you know what the victim was doing there? Do you know anything about the safety and security protocols at that building? And is there a history of violent issues outside this building?
So I'll go in reverse order. I don't know that we have a history of violence outside that building. These were classes, like it was anger management classes that were being attended. So that evening out there, and so it sounds like the staff there kind of followed a pretty standard safety protocol of locking the business down and contacting the authorities and sheltering in place until officers arrived. And to that end, officers did a great job not really knowing all the circumstances when they arrived, of making contact with folks inside, making sure there was no other threat to the community inside or the people on scene, clearing out the building safely and making sure that was safe. And obviously within 2 minutes of the call coming in, officers responded, life-saving measures, they make the scene safe enough for EMS to enter, and within 10 minutes, EMS is transporting to the hospital.
Do we know if this is drug-related, homeless people, anything like that?
It doesn't appear that this was any indication of homelessness. As far as, like we said, with motive, we're just going to kind of hold back on that for now.
This may be one for the assistant chief. It's a little bit more of a bigger picture, but including this one and including the homicide that happened overnight, that's 5 homicides in the last week. Is this a trend that you guys are concerned about? That's potential rise in homicides just over the last 7 days?
If you look at the numbers and the data from 22 and 23, we're tracking, I think, 74 and 71 respectively. This is homicide number 61 for the year, with about a month and a half left in the year. So it's in line with what we've seen over the past couple of years.
But those were years where there was a sharp rise in homicides. Is that the new normal, do you think? Or I know it's early days, but
well, I hope it's not. And as Chief Davis has alluded to with her expectations and her vision for the Austin Police Department moving forward as she begins her tenure in addressing violent crime in the city.
You said this guy already had a warrant for parole violation, and then during the OIS, he was a felon, shouldn't have had a gun. Does this is obviously a problem, the courthouse and parole and bond and whatnot, but how would you say this impacts your investigation, impacts safety of our community?
Sure. No, that's a good question. And the way I look at it is the criminal justice system is kind of a cog or a spoke in a wheel, right? And the police department is just one spoke in that wheel. We're going to do our job, right? Our patrol officers are going to respond to 911 calls. Our detectives are going to do their follow-up investigation and do arrests, search warrants, all of those things, and we're going to make those arrests. What happens from there is somewhat out of our control. We're going to be the best partners that we can be with the district attorney's office. We're going to support them and give them everything they need to be successful from our standpoint. But at the end of the day, as the police department, we're going to do everything that we're supposed to do for the public to keep them safe. Any other questions?
Any more questions?
What can you tell us about Mr. Levante Harrison? Does he have a history of violence, a record? Has he been arrested before?
Well, I mean, he had a parole warrant, so yeah, obviously he had been arrested before. I know his history, but of course, contacts with the Austin Police Department versus criminal convictions and things. There's a public record issue on that, so I can't really. I hesitate to speak on it right now, but obviously, he was out on parole, and he had violated his parole, so he has been arrested and he has been convicted before.
just if I can follow up on that really quickly, just to make sure I'm totally understanding. This was an incident where this individual was on parole, had violated parole, and this was the first time he had interacted with law enforcement since violating that parole. Does that make sense?
I think it makes. I think you're. Yeah, if I understand your question,
This
he
was the first interaction.
Yeah, he was out on parole, and you know, there would be a better question for pardon and parole as to exactly why they violated his parole, but he had not. Obviously, some standard had not been met, so they issued that revocation warrant, and no, but he hadn't had any interactions with the Austin Police Department between those two events.
Anything else? Yeah, Brittany.
Was he a convicted felon?
Well, he's on parole, so he was. Yeah, he had at least one felony conviction.
So he should not have a gun as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a fair assessment.
Thank you so much, guys, and we'll send this booking photo out to you as well.